The chandeliers above the Grand Elysium Hotel glowed like captured constellations, their golden lights spilling across velvet tablecloths and polished silverware. The air hummed with polite laughter and the gentle clinking of glasses, but at the far end of the banquet hall, an unmistakable silence gathered around one woman. She sat alone. Her name was Aiko Takahashi, heiress to the Takahashi Industrial Empire of Japan, one of the largest textile and technology conglomerates in Asia. To the journalists who had followed her father's death and her sudden inheritance, Aiko was a symbol of grace and mystery. But tonight, under the glimmering lights of New York's most exclusive charity dinner, she looked like a painting misplaced on the wrong wall. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all. Missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride as we're currently battling some technical issues, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. She smiled politely when people looked her way, yet no one dared approach. Not the CEOs comparing yachts, not the wives in diamond collars, not even the mayor whose seat sat uncomfortably close to hers. It wasn't malice. It was fear. Fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of the awkward silence that comes when you don't share a language. Aiko's English was quiet, careful. The accent softened her consonants, made her words sound like ripples on water. But few here had ever spoken to someone who had crossed an ocean just to honor her father's memory with a donation to rebuild art schools in underprivileged communities. So they left her in peace, or in exile. At the center table, where laughter grew loudest, Eleanor Pierce, the event organizer, leaned toward her husband and whispered, "She's so beautiful, but it's sad, isn't it? You'd think someone would at least make her feel welcome." Her husband grunted, eyes fixed on his plate. "These heiresses don't need our pity. She'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. Aiko's chopsticks rested untouched beside a porcelain plate of steak she hadn't ordered. She had requested miso soup softly to the maitre d', but he had nodded vaguely and moved on. The wrong dish was a small thing, but it was a reminder of how far she was from home. She glanced at her phone beneath the table, reading a message from her translator who had fallen ill and couldn't accompany her. "So sorry, Miss Aiko. Please use the app if needed." Her thumb hovered over the translation app icon, but something inside her resisted. She didn't want to translate her loneliness. Then, from the far side of the dining hall, a small commotion stirred. A young waitress in a crisp white uniform rushed forward, balancing 2 trays. She was barely 23, with a name tag that read Maya S. Her eyes carried the restless glow of someone juggling too many shifts and too many dreams. She had been serving all evening unnoticed, her smile automatic and her steps rehearsed. But when her gaze caught Aiko sitting alone, posture poised, eyes quietly sad, something in her chest tugged. Maya knew that look. The look of being surrounded by people and still invisible. As she approached, Eleanor Pierce waved her over. "Miss, could we get another bottle of the Bordeaux, please?" "Of course," Maya replied softly. She poured the wine with care, but her eyes drifted back to Aiko. And then, without planning, without permission, she did something that made the entire table freeze. When she turned toward the heiress, she bowed slightly and said, in fluent, melodic Japanese, "Good evening. How is your meal?" The sound of the language sliced through the air like a violin note in a silent room. Forks paused midair. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Aiko's head snapped up. Her lips parted, her eyes widening in disbelief. For a heartbeat, it was as if the glittering world around her had vanished. "You speak Japanese?" Maya smiled, a little nervous but proud. "Just a little. But you looked a little lonely." Aiko's hand came to her mouth. A sound, half laugh, half sob, escaped her. For the first time that night, her expression bloomed into warmth. The nearby guests watched in stunned fascination as the 2 women exchanged soft words in a language few understood. The sounds were gentle, rhythmic, like falling rain. And for a moment, the grand hall, filled with the powerful and the proud, seemed humbled by something simple and human: connection. Even Eleanor, who had been mid-sip of her wine, set down her glass slowly. "My God," she whispered. "She's smiling." Maya didn't realize she had done something extraordinary. To her, it was just instinct, a small act of kindness. But Aiko felt her walls crack open. She gestured to the empty seat beside her and said, with a trembling voice, "Will you talk with me a little?" Maya looked around nervously, but Aiko's eyes were pleading. And in that silent exchange, something rare was born, a bridge across loneliness. As Maya sat down for a brief moment, the crowd watched in a mix of awe and discomfort, unsure if this was proper, unsure if it was allowed. But neither woman cared. Their voices wove through the air, soft and shimmering, turning the sterile silence into something alive. Somewhere near the head table, a journalist whispered to her photographer, "Get this shot. This is the moment of the night." And indeed it was. When the dinner ended that night, the world outside the Grand Elysium glittered with a cold December rain. Chauffeurs lined up with umbrellas, the hum of engines echoing beneath the marble awning. Guests exited in clusters of laughter and perfume, their charity pledges already half forgotten. But inside, Aiko remained seated for a long time after the last guest had gone. Maya stood a few feet away, awkwardly folding her apron, unsure if she should speak again. Aiko finally rose, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. She looked at the young waitress and said gently, "Because of you, tonight was saved." Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. "You don't have to thank me," she said, switching to English shyly. "I just didn't want you to feel alone." Aiko tilted her head, studying her. There was a stillness in her gaze, the kind that came from years of carefully watching the world before speaking. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly. That night, after exchanging a few words, Aiko handed Maya a small card with a gold-embossed logo, Takahashi Foundation, and whispered, "Please come to the gallery opening tomorrow. I'd like to see you again." Until a year ago, Aiko Takahashi's life had been wrapped in the quiet elegance of old Kyoto temples and glass office towers. She had been raised among antiques and expectations, a girl who learned piano before she learned friendship. Her father, Kenji Takahashi, was a visionary businessman and a stern parent. He believed that a family's name was its temple, and she was its only heir. After his sudden passing from heart failure, the empire became hers, but the warmth in her home vanished. Aiko was admired, photographed, envied, but rarely known. When the media called her the silent heiress, it wasn't an insult, it was the truth. She rarely spoke in public. She smiled perfectly, bowed gracefully, and lived behind glass. Her trip to New York had been more than a public appearance. It was her first act of independence. The art foundation she was funding was hers, not her father's legacy. It was her way of connecting with the world, and perhaps with herself. Yet even in her boldest step forward, she found herself alone at a glittering table where no one dared to speak. Maya Sakamoto, though everyone at the hotel just called her Maya, had grown up in Queens, in a two-room apartment above a laundromat that always smelled faintly of detergent and rain. Her mother, Noriko, had moved from Osaka 20 years earlier, chasing the promise of a new life in America. But when her husband left, Noriko's dreams shrank into survival. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by night, tending a small flower stall by day. Maya grew up bilingual but insecure, always caught between 2 languages and 2 worlds. At school, kids teased her accent. At home, her mother scolded her for losing her Japanese. By the time she turned 18, she had learned one truth: belonging wasn't given, it was built, piece by piece, through kindness. Now, at 23, she worked 3 jobs to pay for art school. The Elysium waitressing gig was supposed to be temporary, just a way to cover tuition for 1 more semester. But as she served champagne to billionaires, she often wondered how far away her own dreams had drifted. When she saw Aiko sitting alone that night, she didn't just see a stranger. She saw her mother, sitting quietly in a crowd, too polite to speak, too proud to show pain. That was why Maya spoke. The next afternoon, Maya hesitated outside the glass doors of the Sakura Gallery, clutching Aiko's invitation. Her uniform was gone. In its place, a thrifted blue dress and a second-hand coat that was too thin for the wind. She didn't belong among marble floors and silk scarves, but curiosity, and something deeper, pulled her inside. The gallery smelled faintly of cedar and fresh paint. Delicate Japanese calligraphy scrolled across rice paper screens, each brushstroke trembling with emotion. In the center hung a painting that caught her breath, a young woman standing on a bridge at dawn, her reflection dissolving into the water below. "Do you like it?" came a soft voice behind her. Maya turned. Aiko stood there, serene in a white kimono-inspired dress, her hair loose for the first time. Without the armor of formality, she looked younger, almost fragile. "It's beautiful," Maya said. "It feels lonely but peaceful." Aiko smiled faintly. "It's titled Between Worlds. My father painted it before I was born. He said it was about people who never fully belong to one place." Maya's breath caught. "That's exactly how I feel." Their eyes met, two souls from opposite sides of the world, bound by a quiet recognition neither could name. Aiko motioned for her to follow. "Would you help me with something?" In a small side room, stacks of unopened crates waited to be arranged for the evening's opening. Aiko lifted one corner of a canvas awkwardly, and Maya instinctively jumped in to help. They laughed when it almost slipped from their hands. For the first time, Aiko laughed freely, a bright crystalline sound that surprised even her. The gallery workers passing by paused, smiling. It was rare to see the Heiress laugh at all. As they worked side by side, Maya asked, "Why did you come here, really?" Aiko hesitated, her voice quiet. "To build something that isn't made of money. To meet people who see me, not my last name." Maya's eyes softened. "Then maybe you came to the right place." Aiko looked at her then, really looked, and something in her heart stirred, fragile and new. The evening of the Sakura Gallery opening began with flashes of cameras and the soft murmur of polite admiration. The rain from the previous night had cleared, leaving the city slick and glimmering like a freshly painted canvas. Aiko stood at the center of the gallery, surrounded by collectors, journalists, and socialites. Every movement she made was graceful, a carefully choreographed dance of small bows and poised smiles. But her mind kept drifting to the staff entrance, where Maya had disappeared hours earlier to help with the catering team. She shouldn't have cared. It wasn't proper for someone in her position to befriend an employee, much less one half her social status. But something about Maya's warmth, her honesty, had chipped through layers of composure Aiko didn't realize she was still wearing. As the press gathered for photos, Eleanor Pierce, the same woman from the dinner, approached with a knowing smile. "Ms. Takahashi, the exhibit is exquisite. I must say your taste is as impeccable as your reputation." Aiko smiled politely. "Thank you. But the artists deserve the praise, not I." "Oh, modesty looks good on you, dear," Eleanor purred before lowering her voice. "By the way, I noticed your little friend from the hotel is here tonight. The waitress, yes? So charming of you to bring her. You always did have a soft spot for the help." The words stung more than Aiko expected. She forced another delicate smile. "Everyone deserves a seat at the table," she replied. Eleanor chuckled, her tone dripping with condescension. "How very humanitarian of you." Aiko's fingers tightened slightly around her glass, but she said nothing more. Meanwhile, in the back room, Maya balanced a tray of champagne flutes as the event staff hustled around. She peeked through the glass partition at Aiko surrounded by the city's elite, people who looked as untouchable as marble statues. Maya couldn't help but smile. Seeing Aiko laugh, seeing her light up the room, it made her heart feel strangely full. But then a voice snapped her back. "Hey Maya, can you take those flutes to the West Wing? The VIPs want a refill." She nodded, weaving through the crowd. As she approached the main room, her tray wobbled slightly, not from clumsiness but from nerves. Aiko noticed her immediately and, without thinking, gave her the softest nod of reassurance. It was such a small gesture, yet it anchored Maya's shaking hands. She delivered the champagne with quiet grace. But just as she turned to leave, she heard a man's voice nearby say in a hushed tone, "That's her, the heiress who's hiding a scandal back home." Something about her father's company and bribes to politicians. Heard she came here to keep things quiet. Maya froze. The man was middle-aged, wearing a tailored gray suit and a press badge clipped to his pocket. His companion leaned closer. You got proof? Not yet, the man said, smirking. But I have sources in Tokyo. There's a file, payments, cover-ups. I'll get her to talk tonight. Maya's pulse quickened. She didn't understand everything they said, but she caught enough to know that Aiko was being targeted. She turned her head just enough to see the reporter slip a small voice recorder into his pocket and begin to make his way toward Aiko. Without thinking, Maya stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir," she said, pretending to stumble slightly. The tray tilted, and half a glass of champagne spilled across his sleeve. "Oh my God! I'm so sorry!" she exclaimed, grabbing napkins. The man cursed under his breath, glaring at her. "Watch where you're going." Maya bowed quickly, apologizing again, while her eyes darted toward Aiko, safe for now, still unaware of what almost happened. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the gallery lights dimmed, Aiko found Maya cleaning up broken glass near the entrance. "You look troubled," Aiko said gently. "Did something happen?" Maya hesitated, torn between honesty and fear of overstepping. But the sincerity in Aiko's eyes was disarming. "There was a man, a journalist, I think. He was talking about you. About something bad." Aiko's expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened. "What did he say?" "That there's a scandal in Japan," Maya said softly. "He said he wanted to expose you." For a long moment, silence filled the space between them. Then Aiko exhaled, as if releasing a weight she had carried too long. "It was only a matter of time," she whispered. Maya frowned. "So it's true." Aiko shook her head. "Not the way they'll tell it. My father made mistakes. I won't deny that. But after he passed, I found records. Money moved where it shouldn't have been. I came here to redirect what's left of his fortune into something clean, something good. But the press doesn't want redemption. They want scandal." Maya took a step closer. "Then tell them the truth." Aiko looked up, her eyes glimmering with pain. "The truth doesn't always survive translation." Those words hung heavy in the air. The next morning, the headline broke. Japanese heiress under scrutiny. Allegations of corporate bribery surface amid charity expansion. It spread fast, from Tokyo to New York, feeding on speculation and envy. Paparazzi gathered outside Aiko's hotel. Business partners withdrew. Invitations were canceled. By noon, she was trending worldwide for all the wrong reasons. At the Sakura Gallery, Maya found Aiko sitting alone in the empty exhibition hall, staring at her father's painting Between Worlds. "I didn't want this to happen," Maya whispered. Aiko turned to her, calm but hollow-eyed. "Neither did I. But sometimes the past doesn't let you go until you face it." Then she looked at Maya, really looked, and said something that would change both their lives. "I need your help." 3 days after the article broke, New York's autumn sky turned gray and sharp with wind. The Takahashi heiress was no longer a headline of intrigue. She was a controversy. Outside the hotel, reporters swarmed like vultures, their cameras flashing each time Aiko tried to step out. Inside, silence clung to the suite like fog. The grand rooms that had once felt elegant now felt like a cage lined with gold. Aiko sat by the window, her tea untouched. The city pulsed below, oblivious to her unraveling. Maya entered quietly, holding a brown paper bag from a nearby cafe. "I brought you something to eat," she said softly. Aiko looked up, eyes tired. "You shouldn't be here. The press will start asking who you are." "I don't care," Maya said, placing the bag down. "You said you needed help. I'm not leaving." Aiko's lips trembled slightly, the faintest crack in her calm. "You're very brave. Or very foolish." Maya smiled. "Both, probably." They ate in silence for a while. Then Aiko stood, walked to her desk, and opened a folder filled with old documents. "These are what they're after," she said. Inside were scanned copies of financial records, company memos, and a few handwritten notes in Japanese. They look complicated, Maya said, frowning at the kanji. They are, Aiko replied. But the truth is buried somewhere in here. My father made a deal with a politician 15 years ago to secure funding for a rural textile factory. When he found out that politician was exploiting workers, he tried to end it, quietly. But by then, the paperwork made him look guilty. So the media thinks he bribed them, Maya said slowly. Yes, Aiko murmured. And now they think I'm continuing what he started. Maya studied the papers, then looked up. Can I help you translate? Aiko hesitated. You'd do that. Of course, Maya said. You once told me truth doesn't always survive translation. Maybe we can make sure this one does. A faint smile ghosted across Aiko's lips. Then let's begin. For the next few hours, they sat side by side at the table, surrounded by half-drunk teacups and papers marked in red ink. The hotel room, once sterile and still, came alive with the sound of soft voices, Japanese mixing with English, laughter breaking through tension. Maya stumbled over some phrases, and Aiko gently corrected her, often with a quiet laugh. You speak like my father, Aiko teased once. Is that good or bad? Good, Aiko said softly. He believed kindness mattered more than perfection. Their eyes met. For a moment, the chaos outside faded away. Then Maya found something, a letter, yellowed with age, tucked between contracts. This one looks personal, she said, unfolding it carefully. The handwriting was elegant, in faded ink. Aiko took it, scanning the words. Her breath caught. It's from my father, addressed to someone named Nakamura. He wrote, If they ever find this, tell Aiko I did what I must to protect her. She stared at the paper, trembling. I never knew this existed. Maya leaned closer. Who's Nakamura? Aiko swallowed hard. My father's advisor. He disappeared after the investigation started. They said he took money and fled. But what if he didn't? The air between them thickened with realization. Aiko whispered, If I can find Nakamura, maybe I can prove everything. That night, as the city lights flickered through rain-streaked glass, Aiko and Maya pored over travel records, old emails, and corporate documents. One name appeared repeatedly. Nakamura and Sons Logistics, Okinawa branch. Maya looked up from her laptop. Okinawa. That's in southern Japan, right? Aiko nodded. Yes. My father took several trips there in his last years. The press thought it was leisure. It wasn't. Maya hesitated, then said what both were thinking. We have to go. Aiko's eyes widened slightly. Go. To Japan. You can't clear your father's name from here, Maya said. And if this Nakamura is still alive, he's the only one who can tell the truth. Aiko paced the room, her hands trembling. If I go back now, I'll be surrounded by media. They'll tear me apart before I can even speak. Maya stood and placed a gentle hand on her arm. Then don't go as the heiress. Go as Aiko, the daughter who wants to know the truth. Their eyes locked again. Aiko's full of fear, Maya's full of fierce determination. And for the first time, Aiko didn't feel entirely alone. 2 days later, under the dim hum of JFK Airport, Aiko wore a plain gray coat and dark glasses. Maya carried a small backpack, glancing nervously at the departure gate. Are you sure about this? Maya whispered. No, Aiko said honestly. But I've spent my life letting others speak for me. Maybe it's time I spoke for myself. They boarded the flight in silence. As the plane lifted through the clouds, Aiko looked out the window, the lights of New York fading beneath her, 1,000 untold stories glowing in miniature. Maya leaned over and said softly, We'll find him. I promise. Aiko turned to her and smiled faintly. You keep making promises you don't have to. I know, Maya replied. But I want to. And somewhere above the Pacific, between two worlds, just like the painting her father had left behind, Aiko began to believe that maybe this journey wasn't just about clearing a name. Maybe it was about finding herself. The sky over Okinawa was blinding blue when the plane touched down. The humid air smelled of salt and hibiscus, and the rhythmic sound of waves seemed to follow them everywhere. Aiko had changed into simple clothes. Jeans, a white blouse, a woven hat. Maya carried a single camera bag slung over her shoulder. They looked less like an heiress and her assistant and more like two travelers chasing something half-forgotten. Their first stop was a quiet fishing town called Naha, where Nakamura's logistics company had once operated. The small building, now shuttered and faded, stood by the docks like a memory that refused to die. Maya pushed the rusty gate open, glancing at Aiko. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Aiko nodded slowly. "Yes. The address matches the one on the old contracts." Inside, dust motes drifted through the sunlight. Old ledgers lay scattered on the floor, and the air carried the faint smell of sea and oil. Aiko walked past broken crates until she found a filing cabinet half hidden behind a tarp. She tugged it open and froze. Inside were rows of envelopes labeled in neat handwriting. On each one, the Takahashi family crest. Maya leaned over her shoulder. "Oh my God." Aiko pulled one envelope out and opened it carefully. Inside was a stack of letters, all written by Nakamura. One line stood out immediately. "Miss Aiko, if you're reading this, it means they've come for the company. I tried to protect your father's legacy, but they found out about the fund, the hidden one. If you want to make things right, find the key he left behind." Aiko's hands trembled. "The key?" Maya frowned. "What fund? What key?" But before Aiko could answer, a noise came from behind them. The creak of a door, footsteps crunching on gravel. A man's voice called out in Japanese, low and cautious. "Who's there?" Aiko spun around. An elderly man stood in the doorway, his gray hair tied back, his clothes worn but clean. His eyes widened as they met hers. "Miss Aiko." Her breath caught. "Nakamura-san." The old man nodded slowly, disbelief washing over him. "I thought you'd never come." They sat in a small tea shop near the harbor, the old man's hands shaking as he poured green tea. His face was deeply lined, years of hiding and guilt carved into his skin. "I stayed away to protect your father's name," Nakamura said, voice trembling. "But when I heard the rumors, I feared this day would come." Aiko leaned forward. "You said there was a fund. What was it?" He sighed heavily. "Your father created a secret account after discovering corruption in his own board. He wanted to use that money to pay the workers who had been cheated, a quiet act of reparation. But before he could make it public, someone leaked the documents, twisting it to look like bribery." "So the money wasn't a bribe," Maya said. "No," Nakamura said. "It was atonement." Aiko's eyes filled with tears. "All these years, he wasn't guilty?" Nakamura looked pained. "He died trying to protect you from the backlash. He thought if the scandal stayed on him, you could start anew." The revelation hit Aiko like a wave. Grief, guilt, and relief colliding all at once. She covered her face, her shoulders shaking silently. Maya reached across the table and placed her hand over Aiko's. "You can still finish what he started." But Nakamura's eyes clouded with worry. "There's more. Someone else knows about the fund. A man named Daichi Ito, your father's former partner. He was the one who leaked the first documents. He'll come for you now that you're here." "Why?" Aiko asked. "Because you have what he wants," Nakamura said grimly. "The key, the access to that hidden account." That night, Aiko couldn't sleep. The sound of the ocean outside their small inn felt heavier than before. She sat by the window, staring at the stars, clutching the letter from Nakamura. Maya stirred awake and sat beside her. "You okay?" she asked softly. Aiko nodded faintly. "He sacrificed everything to protect me. And yet I spent years ashamed of him." "You didn't know," Maya said gently. "But now you do. You can make it right." Aiko turned to her, eyes shimmering. "You always say that like it's easy to fix the past." Maya smiled sadly. "It's not. But it's harder to live with regret." For a long moment neither spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken feelings. Admiration, grief, maybe something more fragile and dangerous. Then a sudden knock shattered the quiet. Maya jumped. "Who's that?" Aiko stood slowly, approaching the door. It's late. She opened it just a crack, and froze. Standing there was a man in a dark suit, rain dripping from his shoulders. His expression was sharp, his eyes colder than the night. "Miss Takahashi," he said in English, his tone formal and unervingly polite. "I represent Mr. Daichi Ito. He's been looking for you." Maya's pulse spiked. "How did you?" The man cut her off with a thin smile. "Your father's secrets have caused quite a mess. It's time they were resolved properly. You have something that belongs to us." Aiko's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Tell your employer I have nothing to give him." The man leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Then perhaps we'll take it another way." And before either of them could react, a black car pulled up outside the inn, its headlights cutting through the rain. Aiko slammed the door shut and locked it. "We need to go. Now." Maya grabbed her bag, panic rising. "Who are they?" Aiko's voice trembled as she replied. "The men who buried my father's truth. They fled through the back alley, their footsteps splashing through puddles, hearts pounding. The night swallowed them whole. Two figures running beneath the storm, chased by shadows from a past neither fully understood. Behind them, the black car idled by the inn, its lights still burning through the rain. Inside, the man in the suit watched them vanish into the darkness, and smiled. "If you uncovered a truth that powerful people wanted buried, would you risk your safety to reveal it, or stay silent to survive? Tell us in the comments. Is truth worth the danger it brings?" The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It drummed against the tin roofs of Naha like an endless heartbeat, relentless, suffocating, cold. Aiko and Maya had taken shelter in a small ryokan hidden deep in the old district. Its wooden walls creaked with the wind, and the air smelled faintly of tatami and seaweed soup. Neither had slept much since the night they fled the inn. Aiko sat cross-legged on the floor, a faded map spread in front of her, tracing the handwritten coordinates Nakamura had scrawled on the back of his last letter. "He said the key was hidden near the old textile factory," she murmured. "That's where everything began." Maya sipped instant coffee from a paper cup, her hands shaking slightly. "Then we'll go tomorrow morning," she said. "We'll find it before they find us." But Aiko didn't answer. She stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection fractured in the glass. "Maya, maybe I should turn myself in." "What?" "No." Aiko looked down, her voice quiet but resolute. "If I surrender, maybe they'll leave you alone." Maya set the cup down hard. "Don't say that. This isn't your fault." "It doesn't matter whose fault it is," Aiko whispered. "The world already decided it's mine." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with exhaustion, fear, and the ache of two people who had run too far with too little hope. Maya reached across the map and took Aiko's hand. "You told me once that truth doesn't hide forever. So don't start hiding now." Aiko's eyes softened. "You always know what to say." Maya smiled faintly. "That's because I've spent my life wanting someone to say it to me." For a brief moment, warmth flickered between them. Fragile, human, real. Then a loud thud echoed from the hallway. Aiko froze. Maya's eyes widened. Another thud. Then the sound of a door creaking open downstairs. "They found us," Aiko whispered. Maya grabbed the small travel bag where they kept the letters and documents. "We need to go now." They slipped out through the back door, feet splashing across muddy stone paths, the rain slicing across their faces. Behind them, faint voices shouted in Japanese. Orders, footsteps, the sound of pursuit. They ran until the lights of the ryokan disappeared behind trees. Their breath came in sharp gasps, lungs burning. Finally, they ducked beneath the eaves of an abandoned warehouse. Maya leaned against the wall, drenched and trembling. "We can't keep running forever." "I know," Aiko said, wiping rain from her face. "But we're close. If we find the key, maybe we can end this." Maya looked at her. This woman she'd met only days ago, yet now felt bound to by something she couldn't explain. "Then let's end it together." At dawn, the storm broke. They made their way to the outskirts of the island, where the ruins of the old Takahashi textile factory stood. Vines had claimed its walls. Rust and moss had devoured its windows. Inside, shafts of morning light filtered through holes in the roof. Machinery sat like sleeping beasts, silent witnesses to decades of work and loss. Aiko's fingers brushed along a cracked wall until she found what she was searching for, a small plaque bearing her father's name. Beneath it, faint etchings marked an X. "This is it," she whispered. Maya knelt beside her, pulling a small chisel from her bag. Together they pried open the cement. After several tense minutes, a small metal box emerged, corroded but intact. Aiko's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a USB drive wrapped in silk. On the silk, written in her father's unmistakable handwriting, were 3 words: "For the truth." Tears welled in Aiko's eyes. He knew this would happen. Maya placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then this is it, the proof. The world will finally see what he really did." But before Aiko could respond, a voice echoed through the factory. "Touching. Truly touching." They both turned, and froze. Standing in the doorway was Daichi Ito. He looked younger than Aiko had imagined. Mid-40s, sharp suit, expression smooth as glass. Behind him, 2 men in black stepped forward. Aiko's heart dropped. "How did you?" He smiled. "You left a trail of kindness, Miss Takahashi. Easy to follow." Maya's grip tightened on the USB. "You're the one who destroyed her father's name." Ito tilted his head. "Destroyed? No. I simply revealed the truth the world deserved to see. His guilt made me rich. His silence made me powerful." Aiko stepped forward, fury breaking through her calm. "You used his guilt to build your empire." He smiled. "And now you'll do the same for me. Hand over the drive, and I might let you both walk out alive." Maya's pulse raced. "You'll kill us anyway." "Maybe," Ito said lightly. "But you're making this very difficult." He motioned to his men, who stepped closer. Aiko looked at Maya, and in that fleeting glance something wordless passed between them. "Run." Maya suddenly hurled the USB toward a broken staircase. It skidded under the debris just as one of the men lunged forward. "Run!" Aiko shouted. They bolted through a side door, sprinting into the blinding daylight as shouts erupted behind them. Their shoes slid on wet earth, the factory fading behind them, until a deafening crash echoed through the valley. They turned. Smoke was rising from one corner of the building. Maya gasped. "Did they?" Aiko stared, heart sinking. "The factory. It's burning." The truth, her father's legacy, maybe everything, gone in flames. By nightfall, they were hiding near the cliffs overlooking the sea. The air was heavy with ash. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Aiko whispered, "It's over. The proof is gone." Maya shook her head. "We don't know that. Maybe the drive survived." "Stop," Aiko said sharply. Her voice broke. "You don't understand. Everything I've done, it's meaningless now." Maya's throat tightened. "That's not true." Aiko turned to her, eyes glistening with despair. "My father's name will die with lies. And you risked your life for nothing." Maya reached out, gripping her shoulders. "Don't you dare say that. You gave me something to believe in again." Aiko's lip trembled. "And what if I can't save any of it?" "Then we save you," Maya said fiercely. For a moment, the heiress, the woman who had spent her whole life hiding behind politeness and silence, broke. Tears streamed down her face as she sank to her knees. Maya knelt beside her, wrapping her arms around her. The waves crashed below like thunder, and the fire's orange glow painted the horizon. In that moment, soaked, exhausted, broken, they clung to each other like 2 lost souls holding on to the last light left in the world. The fire that devoured the old Takahashi textile factory burned through the night. By morning, only a skeleton of blackened beams remained, still steaming beneath the rain. Aiko and Maya watched from a distance, the smell of smoke clinging to their clothes. The silence between them was heavy, the kind that follows the death of something sacred. Maya's voice cracked first. "We should go. If they find us here." Aiko didn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on the ruins, eyes hollow, expression unreadable. "This was where it all began," she whispered. "And now it ends here." Maya turned toward her, shivering from both cold and fear. "No. Not yet. We can still." Aiko cut her off. "The proof is gone. The letters, the USB. Everything." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "I thought if I came here, if I faced the truth, I could fix what my father couldn't. But maybe all I've done is destroy what little was left of him." Her voice broke. The heiress, the poised, perfect symbol of composure, crumbled. Tears streaked her face, mingling with soot and rain. Maya stepped closer, her own voice trembling. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Aiko? Someone who never stopped trying to do what was right, even when the world told her not to." Aiko shook her head, her words barely audible. It wasn't enough. Maya crouched beside her. "It's never enough for people like us, the ones who care too much. But that doesn't mean it's worthless." The sound of the sea below them swelled, as if echoing her words. They spent the morning hiding near the cliffs, taking refuge beneath an overhang. The rain softened to a mist, and from their vantage point, the coastline stretched endlessly. Gray sea meeting gray sky. Maya handed Aiko a small flask of water. "Drink," she said softly. Aiko took a sip, her hands still trembling. "I've spent so long chasing what my father wanted me to be," she murmured. "Polite, controlled, invisible. But the truth is, I don't even know who Aiko Takahashi is without his name." Maya smiled faintly. "Maybe it's time you find out." Aiko looked at her. "How?" "Everything I've ever known is gone." "Not everything," Maya said. "You still have your heart. And you have the truth, even if the proof is gone. That's still something." Aiko gazed out at the sea. "But who will believe me?" Maya's eyes softened. "I will." The simplicity of it, the certainty, pierced Aiko's despair like sunlight through fog. By afternoon, the storm cleared. The air was warm again, and distant bells from a coastal shrine echoed through the hills. Maya sat cross-legged, sketching in a worn notebook she carried everywhere. Aiko leaned closer. "You draw." Maya laughed quietly. "I try. It helps me think." Aiko watched the pencil glide across the paper. The outline of the burnt factory, the waves, two small figures on the cliff. "You're very talented," she said softly. Maya smiled without looking up. "My mom used to say art is a way of remembering things that are gone. That if you can draw it, it never really disappears." Aiko's gaze drifted toward the ruins again. "Then draw this moment. The ashes, the sea. All of it. I don't want to forget." Maya paused, then nodded, and she did. Each stroke captured the devastation and quiet defiance of that day. When she was done, she handed the sketchbook to Aiko. "For when you need to remember that even when everything burns," Maya said softly, "something beautiful can still come from it." Aiko stared at the drawing, her throat tightening. "You always know how to find hope in ruins." Maya met her eyes. "Because that's where people like us are born, in ruins." They smiled, faintly but truly. And that's when Aiko noticed something. In Maya's sketch, near the base of the factory, she had drawn a small shadowed shape, a jagged piece of debris with a faint glint. "Maya," Aiko said slowly, leaning forward. "This part, the metal by the stairs. Was that really there?" Maya blinked. "I think so. I just drew what I saw before we left." Aiko's pulse quickened. "Then it might still be there." "What might?" "The USB drive," Aiko whispered. "It slid under the stairs. The fire came from the east wing, not that side. It could have survived." Maya's eyes widened. "You think?" "I know," Aiko said, standing abruptly. "Come on." They raced back to the site, hearts pounding. Smoke still lingered, but the flames had died. The ground was slick with mud, and the air smelled of metal and salt. Aiko led the way to the broken staircase. The steel frame was warped but intact. She knelt, digging through ashes and twisted boards with her bare hands. Minutes passed, long, desperate minutes. Then Maya gasped. "Wait, what's that?" A small flash of silver glinted beneath the debris. Aiko reached for it, pulling it free. It was blackened, warped at the edges, but unmistakably the USB drive. Aiko's breath caught. It survived. Maya grinned through tears. It actually survived. Aiko stared at it as if it were a sacred relic. "My father's truth, it's still here." She clutched the drive to her chest, sobbing with relief. Maya wrapped her arms around her, and for a moment the world felt alive again, the rain washing away soot and sorrow. They stood there amid the ruins, two women who had lost everything yet found something indestructible. Hope. That night, back in their small inn, Maya connected the USB to her laptop with shaking hands. The screen flickered, a folder appeared. Inside were dozens of files. Ledgers, letters, audio recordings, and one video. Aiko clicked play. The image that appeared was grainy but unmistakable. Her father, sitting in his study. His voice filled the room. Calm, deep, filled with love. "If you're watching this, Aiko, then you found what I couldn't finish. The world may never understand, but remember, truth doesn't need an audience. It needs courage. And you, my daughter, have always had that." Tears streamed down Aiko's face. Maya reached out, touching her shoulder gently. Aiko whispered, "He knew I'd come." Maya nodded, her own eyes glistening. "Then we finish what he started." Aiko smiled through her tears. Together. The next morning dawned gray and silent, the kind of morning that felt like it was holding its breath. Aiko sat by the window of their small inn, the recovered USB drive resting on the table beside a cup of untouched tea. Her reflection in the glass looked different now, not the quiet heiress who avoided attention, but a woman with purpose carved into every line of her face. Maya stirred awake on the futon behind her. "You didn't sleep again," she murmured. Aiko smiled faintly. "No. I was thinking about how to end this." Maya pushed herself up, rubbing her eyes. "You mean how to fight back?" Aiko nodded. "If we try to release the files anonymously, Ito will bury it before anyone can see. We need to expose him publicly, somewhere he can't control the narrative." Maya frowned. "Like where?" Aiko turned toward her, determination burning in her gaze. "Tokyo. At the Foundation Gala tonight. He'll be there, surrounded by the same people who once worshipped my father. It's poetic, isn't it? The same stage that condemned him will reveal the truth." Maya's breath caught. "That's dangerous." Aiko's lips curved into a sad smile. "So is silence." By dusk, Tokyo shimmered like a constellation of steel and neon. The Imperial Grand Hotel glowed with golden light, and black cars lined the circular driveway. Cameras flashed, reporters murmured, and guests in evening gowns and tailored suits moved like glittering currents through the marble lobby. Among them, unnoticed at first, walked Aiko Takahashi, her hair swept up, dressed in an elegant black gown that matched the quiet fire in her eyes. Beside her, Maya moved with practiced confidence, carrying a small silver laptop in her clutch. "Security's tight," Maya whispered. "Are you sure about this?" Aiko's voice was calm. "Completely." They entered the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers bathed the guests in light. At the far end of the hall, a stage was set for Daichi Ito, who stood greeting politicians and investors with the smoothness of a man who believed himself untouchable. When his gaze met Aiko's across the room, his smile faltered for the briefest second, then returned, colder this time. "Well," he murmured as she approached, "if it isn't the prodigal daughter." "Mr. Ito," Aiko replied evenly. "Enjoying your empire?" "Immensely," he said, offering a glass of champagne. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to be brave enough to show your face here after what your father did." Aiko's expression didn't change. "No, I imagine truth isn't something you expect." He chuckled softly. "Still chasing ghosts, Miss Takahashi? The past is best left buried." Aiko smiled faintly. "Funny. That's what guilty men always say." Before he could respond, a bell chimed, signaling the start of the presentation. The crowd turned toward the stage as Ito's assistant handed him the microphone. He began his speech with practiced charm. Friends, partners, and visionaries. Tonight, we celebrate the progress of the Aiko Takahashi Foundation, a beacon of innovation. A soft click echoed from the back of the hall. The large LED screens behind him flickered. He paused. And the continued commitment to. Static interrupted him. The crowd murmured. Then, a video appeared. Grainy old, but unmistakable. Takahiro Takahashi appeared on the screen, seated in his study. His voice filled the ballroom, calm yet firm. If you're seeing this, then my name has been used to cover corruption. My only crime was trying to make things right for the workers who suffered under my own company's mistakes. The money was never bribes, it was restitution. Those who profited from twisting that truth are the ones who deserve the shame. A stunned silence swept through the room. Guests turned, whispering. Reporters raised their cameras. Ito's face drained of color. "Turn it off," he barked. But Aiko stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "You can't stop the truth anymore, Mr. Ito. It's already live." Maya, at the back of the room, hit enter on her laptop. Instantly, the files began uploading to multiple global news outlets and social platforms. Screens around the room displayed ledgers, recordings, undeniable evidence of Ito's manipulation. The audience gasped. Some stepped back. Others began filming. Ito's composure cracked. "You foolish girl," he hissed, descending the stage. "You think anyone will believe the daughter of a disgraced man?" Aiko met his gaze unflinchingly. "They'll believe proof." He lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "You don't understand what you've done." "Let her go." Maya's voice cut through the chaos. She was at his side in seconds, pulling him away. The force of it knocked his champagne glass to the ground, shattering into glittering shards. Security rushed forward. Guests whispered, cameras flashed. Ito tried to speak, but reporters swarmed him with questions. Accusations, demands, disbelief. His empire was unraveling before the world's eyes. Aiko stood silently amid the storm, her father's voice still echoing from the speakers. Truth doesn't need an audience. It needs courage. She felt Maya's hand find hers. Their fingers intertwined, grounding each other as the chaos raged. Hours later, after the ballroom had emptied and Ito had been escorted away under police supervision, Aiko and Maya stepped out onto the hotel's rooftop terrace. Tokyo stretched beneath them. Endless, alive, beautiful. Aiko inhaled deeply, for the first time in years feeling air that didn't taste of guilt. Maya leaned on the railing beside her. "You did it," she said softly. "He's finished. The world knows the truth." Aiko shook her head gently. "We did it." She turned to face Maya. "You could have walked away, but you stayed." Maya smiled. "You taught me that silence can be its own kind of lie." The wind lifted Aiko's hair, cool and gentle. "My father once said truth has a price. I think he was right. But he also said something else, that love is what makes paying it worth it." Maya looked at her, eyes soft. He was right about that too. For a moment, time seemed to still, the city lights shimmering around them, the night alive with a quiet promise. Aiko took Maya's hand. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted. Maya squeezed her fingers. "Then we'll find out. Together." Below them, the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon. Gold bleeding into indigo. The night was over. The truth had finally risen. The sun rose over Tokyo like a slow exhale, soft light spilling between towers of glass and steel, washing away the chaos of the night before. News outlets around the world blazed with headlines. Takahashi scandal exposed as corporate frame-up. Whistleblower evidence reveals massive conspiracy by Daiichi Ito. Japanese heiress redeems father's legacy after 2 decades. Aiko Takahashi's name, once synonymous with scandal and shame, was now being spoken with awe and something closer to respect. But for Aiko herself, the noise of it all barely reached her. She stood at the small hilltop cemetery overlooking the city, a single white chrysanthemum in her hand. The autumn air carried the scent of pine and incense. Kneeling before her father's grave, she placed the flower carefully against the smooth stone. "Father," she whispered, her voice steady but soft, "I thought clearing your name would feel like victory. But it feels more like peace. Quiet, gentle peace. I think that's what you wanted all along." Her eyes closed, and for a moment she simply listened, to the wind, to the rustling trees, to the city humming below. When she opened them, Maya was standing a few paces behind, holding a small camera. "You didn't have to wait," Aiko said, smiling faintly. "I wanted to," Maya replied. "Some moments shouldn't be rushed." Aiko walked toward her, her gaze warm. "You've been by my side through everything. I still don't know how to thank you." Maya lifted the camera slightly. "Let me show you something instead." She opened the screen on the back. There, a photo appeared. Aiko standing by her father's grave, sunlight breaking through the clouds behind her like a blessing. "It's beautiful," Aiko whispered. Maya nodded. "You look like someone who found her truth." Aiko's eyes glistened. "Maybe I finally did." Later that afternoon, they walked through a quiet street market in Shinjuku, the kind that smelled of grilled squid, roasted chestnuts, and new beginnings. People whispered as they passed, but this time the looks weren't of judgment. They were of recognition, even admiration. A vendor bowed slightly. "Miss Takahashi, your father was a good man. Thank you for showing us the truth." Aiko bowed back deeply, humbled. "Thank you for remembering him." When they reached a small tea house, Aiko gestured to an empty table by the window. "Tea." Maya grinned. "Only if you let me pay this time." They sat down, the sunlight turning golden as it filtered through paper screens. Steam rose from their cups, curling into the quiet air. For a while neither spoke, just the comfort of being there, of having made it through fire and found each other on the other side. Then Maya asked, "What will you do now?" Aiko looked down at her cup, then out at the city beyond. "I think I'll rebuild the Takahashi Foundation, but not for profit or politics. For people. My father's original vision was to help workers, families, children. That's what it should have been all along." Maya smiled softly. "He'd be proud." Aiko met her gaze. "I think he'd be proud of you too." Maya blinked, surprised. "Me?" Aiko nodded. "You gave me courage when I had none. You reminded me that truth isn't just about justice. It's about heart. About connection." For a moment, Maya didn't speak. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Aiko's. "You did the same for me." The touch lingered, quiet, steady, filled with all the words neither dared to say aloud. Outside, a small group of children laughed as they chased a paper ball down the street. Their laughter floated through the open window, light and pure. Aiko smiled. "Do you hear that?" Maya tilted her head. "What?" "Life," Aiko said simply. "It keeps moving. No matter how much pain we've seen, it always finds a way to begin again." That evening, the two of them took a train to the coast. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the soft blue of twilight and the endless shimmer of the sea. They walked along the same cliffs where they'd once hidden, the air cooler now, gentler. Aiko stopped near the edge, looking out across the horizon. "Do you remember this place?" Maya nodded. "How could I forget? It's where we thought everything was over." Aiko smiled. "And now it's where everything begins." Maya stepped beside her, watching the waves crash below. "Do you ever wonder what your father would say if he could see you now?" Aiko thought for a moment. "He'd probably tell me I finally learned to speak, not in English, not in Japanese, but in the language of truth." Maya laughed softly. "That's poetic." Aiko glanced at her, her expression tender. "You inspired it." The breeze tugged at their hair, carrying the faint scent of salt and jasmine. They stood side by side in silence, not the kind born of awkwardness, but of understanding. The world, vast and uncertain, stretched before them. But for once, neither felt lost. Weeks later, international foundations invited Aiko to speak about corporate transparency and cultural resilience. She accepted, not for fame, but for purpose. Maya traveled with her, documenting their journey in photographs and quiet reflections. Each image told a story of ruin, revelation, and rebirth. Together, they turned tragedy into testimony. And at every event, Aiko ended her speech the same way. My father once told me that truth doesn't hide forever. I used to think that meant exposing lies. But now I understand it also means finding yourself. The moment you stop pretending, the moment you let love and courage guide you, that's when truth finally speaks. Audiences always rose to their feet. One night after their final event of the season, Aiko and Maya sat on a rooftop in Kyoto, watching paper lanterns float across the river. The city glowed beneath them, quiet, ancient, infinite. Maya whispered, "Do you think we'll ever stop running toward something?" Aiko smiled, her hand finding Maya's once more. "No. But maybe now we're finally running with something. Hope." The lanterns drifted higher, their light reflected in Aiko's eyes. Eyes that had once been full of sorrow, now filled with quiet joy. The night carried their laughter softly into the sky, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like freedom. If you were given the chance to rewrite your family's story, to turn pain into purpose, would you take it? Share what truth means to you. Is it forgiveness, courage, or love? The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.